Donc bonjour les amis, bienvenue dans cette nouvelle vidéo et aujourd'hui nous accueillons un membre de l'équipe de Riot Games. Can you quickly introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Ed, also known as SapMagic, and I lead the rank team.
Voilà, et donc aujourd'hui on va parler de pas mal de choses concernant 2019, concernant les classés, concernant les fils, comment est-ce que le système de récompense, les nouvelles divisions qui vont arriver, etc., etc. Donc pas mal de nouvelles choses qui vont arriver pour 2019 et aujourd'hui on va discuter de tout ça ensemble. On va essayer de poser un maximum de questions pour être un petit peu plus clair là-dessus et pour vous apporter un petit peu plus d'éclaircissement. So I guess we can get started. And
Sure.
the first point I wanted to mention was about new divisions. Can you talk a bit more about this for us?
Yeah, so I can give a brief overview, and if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. So for next year, what we're looking at is actually adding 2 new tiers to the rank system. So first, let's talk about the reason why we decided to do that, right? There were a bunch of them, but what it basically comes down to is that in the rank system right now, there are certain parts of the experience where you can actually improve quite a bit, but you won't see any movement in your rank. So let's take a bronze player, right? Bronze is a pretty large tier right now. It's a pretty like 20-30% of players. And so if you can imagine, maybe I'm bronze 3, I could get quite a bit better. Like my MMR could improve, but my rank might not actually move that much or at all. And so that was was the major impetus for us wanting to do new tiers in the system. The alternative is we could have kind of shifted the population around the existing tiers, but doing that would have probably had a bigger effect on what it means to be any particular tier, right? You could imagine we could take a lot of the players in bronze and we could move them into silver and just call it a day, but that would probably not be best in terms of what players think silver means, what players think gold means, etc. And so we decided to add 2 new ones instead. We added them in 2 kind of specific places, although we can generally move players around wherever, kind of just as percentiles of players. But we added one at the bottom because the example I gave you about bronze before, and even silver to some extent, it's a pretty big tier. And then we added one toward the top, Grandmaster. And at the top, we were kind of solving a slightly different problem. We were solving the problem where Diamond players from Diamond 5 all the way to Diamond 1 can be pretty substantially different in skill. Kind of same goes for Master tier, right? The bottom of Master and the top of Master, right toward Challenger, can be pretty different. And so adding another tier there kind of lets us recalibrate all 3 of those and get players of similar skill into the same tiers together. I may not have mentioned it, but the bottom tier is called Iron. One of the reasons we put it below bronze as opposed to above bronze or somewhere else entirely was we actually were trying to be mindful of, we didn't want to just put a barrier between bronze players getting to silver, right? We didn't want to do that. And at the same time, we knew from the get-go that we wanted brand new players to ranked who are often pretty bad at the game to actually have a good starting point that they can climb from. And so we're starting all new players, like new accounts who have never played ranked before, in Iron. And so you'll basically start in Iron, you'll go up through bronze into silver, and hopefully to gold and beyond, which we think is a pretty good experience. One of the worries that we had as a result of that, though, was some players who are bronze right now, like, what will happen next year, right? Will they reset? Will they go down to Iron? Will that feel bad?
It's based on MMR, right?
It is based on MMR. And I think, like, when you look at the lowest bronze players right now, like bronze 5, bronze 4, you may see some of those players initially place in Iron next season, like high Iron or whatever, but they'll climb out really quickly. And by the end of the season next year, they should end up being probably a little bit higher than they are even now. And so we're not super worried about it. I think it'll be okay.
All right, so to summarize, it's mainly because there's problems. The first reason is obviously to make people feel like they're improving and not being stuck in one particular elo. And other reasons is because of the gap of skills between players of the same division. For instance, what we have in Diamond 5 for quite a time now is that there's so many players that can't seem to get out of Diamond 5, even Diamond 4, because there's a huge difference in Diamond 5 and Diamond 4. And yeah, that was a huge issue till now, and I really wanted to talk about it. And that's the same for low master. So the only thing the only thing I see now is that we cannot meme about bronze anymore. And that's a bit sad because
I'm
that's
so
been a
sorry.
thing.
Although
That's
I've seen plenty of players find ways to meme about Iron 4, so I'm not too worried.
it's not. I don't think it's gonna have the same meaning as bronze 5. You know. So I'm a bit sad about it, but I think it's a good thing that we have a brand new division for particularly new players, and but I guess this whole division thing is it's kind of the same thing as MMR. I mean, it works like MMR to be like if we remove all these divisions, it's still gonna be MMR. So it's more about there's gonna be a more of a clear difference between a Diamond 5 and, for example, a Platinum 1, and so I think it's a good thing overall. That may solve the problem. I'm not sure how the algorithms work for MMR and divisions, but that's definitely a problem we had with Diamond 5 and Low Master.
Yeah, if you think about it, you can imagine a system where the only thing you have is MMR, right? And you can then have just a direct mapping of like this MMR means this rank. We don't really quite do that. It's a little bit different, but I think you hit the nail on the head where you said, well, actually, like you're still the same MMR, right? We're just kind of we're giving you a better journey. We're giving you better feedback about your actual skill. I think that's right. It's not that we're changing what skill different players are, but we're recognizing you when you're actually improving. The joke that I like to, or maybe not a joke, the example I like to give is a player who's in bronze right now who gains 300 or 400 MMR might still be in bronze, and that's a lot of MMR. So you're talking about a player who's improved pretty dramatically, but they're not getting any feedback at all that they're getting better at the game. And I think that can be really discouraging, especially if you're kind of in the camp of a new player who is just getting acclimated to the game, trying to learn, trying to get good feedback, and you're not getting anything other than,
That's true.
yeah, you're bronze still. Like that just feels really bad. And I think while it is arbitrary, we in general want to have tiers that map to similarly skilled players, right? And if you think about the example in Diamond, that's not really true right now. I think in a lot of regions, what you'll see from Diamond 5 to Diamond 1, like we were talking about, is, wow, is this even the same skill level of player? They're all called Diamond, but it doesn't really feel like they're the same games.
Yeah,
And I
there's
think
a
we want to
huge
acknowledge
gap.
and fix that.
To be honest, there's a huge gap between the Diamond 1 player and the Diamond 5 players. It's just not the same thing. And
Yeah.
I think it's kind of the same for like low master to high master. There's a really huge gap of skill between a master like 300 LP to 0 LP, and yeah, that's definitely an issue because yeah, you like people care, and I know people care a lot about their rank, and they don't want to be how should I put it? They don't want to be put in the same bag as players who play way worse if
Right.
they're in the same division, right? So
Yeah, you want to be recognized for your skill, right? Makes
that's
sense.
true. So yeah, definitely a good thing. But all right, there's one more thing I want to talk about divisions and ranks is promotions, like promotion series. Best of 3 is best of 5s. I think that's been an issue for a lot of players. Is there anything that's gonna be done about it? Is it gonna be the same system? Is it gonna be the same thing about when you finally manage to win your series, and let's say you lose like 2 or 3 games after you won your series? Are you getting back to your previous rank, or how does it work?
Yeah, so in general, we aren't changing a lot about promotion series for the set of changes, with a couple exceptions I'll talk about. But yeah, the general idea is they'll work similar to today. You will you'll get into a best of 3 for a division promotion, and you'll get into a best of 5 for a tier promotion. So let's talk about the areas where that's a little bit different. The first one is in placements. So right now, as you know, you play 10 placement games, and then at the end of the 10th game, you get a rank, and then you start your climb from there. The way it's going to work next season is a little bit different, where you will actually get your placement after a single game, and then you'll play 9 more or whatever. I think we're still calibrating the exact number, but you will play 9 more, and you will actually get LP gains for every single win, like pretty dramatic gains over what you would normally get. So like if you normally get plus 25, it might be closer to like plus 40 or maybe even more than that. And you'll actually skip promotion series during that time. So if you went from like gold 2 to platinum 4 or whatever, you wouldn't play any promotion series during that. Another area where we actually are kind of changing it indirectly is by reducing the number of divisions in a tier, right? So that the amount of LP and the number of promotion series you'll have to play from, say, gold 4 to platinum 4 is going to be shorter because we're removing one division from every single tier. So instead of having to earn like 500 LP and do that many promotion series, you'll earn 400 and do that many promotion series instead. And then the final place where we're going to kind of be changing promotion series a little bit is with position ranks. And the way that position rank promo series will work is we're basically extending promo helper. So basically anytime you're playing in a series where you're below your main rank, you'll actually get like the free win on the first time you entered a series, which should make those a little bit less grindy than they might otherwise be. I think if I answer your sort of implied but not asked question, it's like, hey, promo series can feel really bad. What are you guys doing to fix that? And my answer to that is we definitely should look for ways to make promo series feel good. And I'm super open if you or anyone in your community have suggestions for like what we could do there. I think the suggestion we get a lot of the time is, why don't you remove them? It feels like I have to win an inordinate amount of games in order to get promoted, and it's unfair. I'm playing against people who are higher skilled than me. And my answer to that is kind of like, yeah, they can feel intense, and they sometimes can feel bad as well, especially if you hit that promo series over and over again. But at the same time, often the memories that we have of the rank system are actually those really intense moments, right? It's the best of 5 where I just barely squeaked out the 3rd win and got promoted. If we just auto promoted you and auto demoted you and it was really fluid, it might not feel like that much of an accomplishment to actually hit a new rank, and it might not even feel like that great because you just get demoted after losing one game right after that. I think our system where we have the promotion series followed by a little bit of protection can actually kind of create more highs and lows in the experience where you feel like there are moments that you really remember that stick out to you. And I think that's what we're trying to do there. And it's not perfect, but I think that's the general idea.
Yeah, the thing is, I just believe when you manage to get from, let's say, diamond to masters, I'm gonna take from my from my perspective, okay? So the thing is, once you get promoted, and then you finally had to go through these 5 games, like really tiring games where you have to really focus because you know it's your best of 5 master. Then you finally reach master, and then you hit queue up button, and then you get to the next game, then you lose, and then you go into a next game, you lose again, and then you lose, and you get back to diamond.
You get demoted, you're back in diamond 1.
I'm gonna have to go through that best of 5 masters again. It's just such a pain. So
I think that part in particular can feel really bad, and I think that we could probably do more to help out players who have sort of are getting back to a rank that they fell out of or that they've been to before. That's something that we could definitely look at mid-season or between splits or something like that. If you have any suggestions for what we should look at or what kinds of goals we should try to have when we're making changes to promos, that'd be awesome to hear.
I think, well, there's just a small idea, but let's say you lose at 0 LP, instead of like instantly demoting, it should be a bit harder to demote, but whenever you keep losing at that particular elo, you should just make it that the next wins are gonna be less rewarding, like less LP for the next wins, so it kind of balance it out. So
you're saying like protect people at the bottom of the tier, and then just give them, like, make it harder for them to climb, essentially.
A little bit harder, just not like really harder, but just a little bit harder, because sometimes it's just unlucky. Like sometimes you can't really do anything about it, like you just lose your games, and it doesn't always depend on you. And whenever you have to go through a best of 5 and then you instantly demote like really shortly after, it really feels bad. It really feels bad. But that's just from my perspective, but it can be the same for, let's say, like a Plat 1 player that reaches Diamond 5 and gets back to Plat 1. I think it's not funny for them.
Yeah, I think the thing that we have to balance between, and this is really challenging, right? It's like, on one hand, we want to make sure that we're not discouraging you from playing ranked. So I can imagine, like, let's say you hit Diamond 5, right? A lot of players are just going to go, okay, great, I'm done playing because I finally hit Diamond 5 and I don't want to demote, right? And I think
Yeah.
that sucks, because we actually want players who are really engaged in ranked to feel good about playing. At the same time, one of the things we want to combat is I get to Diamond 5 and I'm like, oh, I'm safe. I can go play games. I can first time champions. I don't have to try really hard because I can't get demoted. I think finding the happy medium between those 2 points
It's really
is
hard.
really quite tricky, right?
Yeah.
We do offer some limited protection once you promote to a rank to kind of keep you from being demoted immediately. And we could probably do more of that. But then we have to just be really careful that we are not that we're not encouraging players to not care about their games, right? Which is a big deal in ranked. And so, yeah, I think that your suggestions are really interesting, and it's all about just sort of finding the right balance, and that can be hard. I think at higher tiers, we tend to be less forgiving than at lower tiers. So, like, the protection we would give to a player at Gold 5, 0 LP now is definitely larger than the protection we would give to, like, a Master player at 0 LP. But yeah, we could probably calibrate it some more.
All right, and there's I think that's great overall, and yeah, that's actually really true. It's really hard to balance because of people like Elo sitting. That's kind of the word.
Yeah.
But and then that happened the same for a challenger, and we can't Elo sit in challenger, and same for masters actually. But there's I'm the kind of player who likes to take breaks sometimes, and when I come back to the game, my rank just goes down. That's for sure, but I kind of feel like my MMR doesn't go down. Quick example, like my main account, like this summer, I haven't been playing for some weeks, I don't know, on one account, and I kept playing like one game from time to time on the other account, but the main account, I didn't play much, so I dropped from Masters like 100 LP to Diamond 3, yeah, Diamond 3.
Yeah.
And the thing is, when I started playing again, I kept having Master players and Diamond 1 players in my games, but I was kind of rusty, so my actual level should be around Diamond 2, Diamond 3 at that time. So when I come back to the game, I don't want to be playing against the players I was playing against when I was playing, because what's gonna happen is that I'm going to lose all my games. I mean, sure, when I win one game, I get a lot of LPs, and I lose like 6 or 7, but what's the point?
But it feels bad to lose those games, right?
If I just keep losing because I kind of int every game, that's what happens. So I think it should be. I mean, it would be a nice thing that if you DK, your MMR just decays just as much as your rank, so that when you come back to the game, it's kind of easier for you. I mean, the games are easier because the level of the games are is obviously worse.
Yeah, we've actually been this year kind of doing some experimentation with what MMR decay should look like. It gets kind of complicated, but the gist is we definitely do see a correlation between a player taking a break from League of Legends, which is a totally normal thing to do, as you pointed out, and their skill also degrading. And I think we want to find a way to understand and model that such that we can say, oh, hey, you haven't played in 6 months, your MMR should temporarily be, here instead of wherever it was, with the knowledge that you'll probably ramp up pretty quickly, right? I think, you could probably say after 10 games or so, you've probably gotten back into the groove of things, and we could probably start putting you back in similarly skilled games to where you were previously. We've experimented with that a bit in normals, and we've experimented in some of our regions with some changes to the way that we do decay and doing MMR decay. We haven't rolled anything out to ranked yet, but I could definitely see us doing something like that next season, once we're confident that we have a good understanding of that relationship between the amount of time you've taken off and the amount that you should be decayed. And also, as soon as we've had an opportunity to verify that there aren't abuse cases to that. Because you can imagine the classic example that we always see come up with decay is, let's say every 6 months that you don't play League of Legends, we take 100 off your MR. Okay, so you take 6 months off, you come back, we're like minus 100, right? Then you play 5 games, and then you're like, you take 6 more months off, and then you come back and you're minus 100 more, and you do that like 4 or 5 times. and now you're like way below your actual skill. Like your skill didn't actually decay 600 MMR, but your MMR has gone down that much, and now you're just like stomping people in all your games. So we want to avoid situations like that. But yeah, definitely agree. We can do better in that space.
Yeah, I kind of agree with people that have multiple accounts and kind of abuse the system so they can just smurf all day. But yeah, it just feels like when you take a break and you come back to the game, the experience isn't as funny when you just you don't know what you're doing. You know for instance that you're going to play bad. You know that you're gonna suck at the game, and you know because of, I mean, you know, in high elo, people are kind of pressuring you when you play bad, so you know you're gonna get
like you're
down.
inting. I'm gonna report you. What's wrong with you?
Yes, so it doesn't feel good because you're gonna play bad and your teammates are gonna be not nice about it, and like all your games are gonna feel bad. So when I come back to the game, I'm gonna be like, I want to feel like, yeah, that's a nice game. I want to have fun and I want to have nice games. Maybe like first 2 games I'm gonna suck and it's gonna be alright because next game are gonna be better. But yeah, it's just not the case. So every time I come back to League, it's like my first 10 to 20 games are just horrible.
Yeah. Well, I think if you take another player who's not as engaged as you, right, who maybe they played League for a year with their friends, they took a break, now they want to come back. Imagine if their first 10 games are all really hard games where they lose. How likely do you think that player is to stick around, right? Like they're probably just going to churn again. So I think that, I mean, that is actually the reason right there why we would want to do better.
Yeah, that's definitely something to work on because it's just, yeah, when you come back to the game, you just wanna have a nice experience, because otherwise, especially for a streamer's perspective, because for example, I stream games, so streaming League of Legends is a lot about how your games are going, right? So when your games are going well, your stream is really nice. It's gonna be really good and
not blaming you at all.
Sometimes games don't go too well, and it doesn't feel good at all. And you're like, I'm gonna take a break, guys.
Yeah, I'm gonna go get some food. Come back later.
So
yeah, that makes sense.
Good, it's a good thing. All right, and maybe we can move on to the next point.
Sure.
It was about queue times and autofill. So, historically, I used to play back in season 1 and 2, and I had queue times around like 1 hour. Like literally.
We got a little bit better than that.
I think my longest queue time was literally 1 hour and a half, like waiting in front of my screen for a game. It wasn't a stream, and I just kept playing Minesweeper or stuff like that. So I know that autofill was a good thing because yeah, you can't have these queue times, and then there's a higher disparity between the level of same players in the same game, so you can have like Diamond 5 players in a Diamond 2 game, and I think it's kind of fine in a way that you want to play more and you don't want to waste all your time in queue. But the problem, like, there's a couple issues we had like this season and even the previous one, where a game with let's say 4 middle tier players with one bad player is gonna be way more affected than 5 players on the same level. I'm not too sure how to explain this, but let's say you have one game with 3 let's say medium players, 1 really good player and 1 really bad player. It's like the bad player is gonna affect the game way more than like the good player, right? And if in the other team there's like 5 players on the same level, it's just not gonna be the same thing. And I think like the 5 players on the same level are gonna be advantaged. That's how I feel it, and that's how a lot of players feel it. So I think like there's a lot of people, especially that's a problem, especially in high elo, right? I don't think that's an issue for lower elo, because there's way more play in lower elos. But I think many higher elo players would rather have a higher queue time, like a tiny bit higher queue time with more quality games, than having a short queue time with like these games where there's just one guy that's completely lost, because as you said, there's a huge difference between a D5 player and a D2 player. So the D5 player is just gonna ruin the game for everyone else, and you can't blame him, right? There's nothing to blame, but that's just a reality that usually these kind of situations happen, and they feel really bad for all the players in the game.
Yeah. Well, let me try to break that apart into kind of two answers a little bit. The first, let's talk about high elo, because I think high elo in a lot of ways is just very different from the rest of the population, as I'm sure you kind of called out. It's a little bit like I was describing before, where it's all about finding the right balance. You can imagine if we wanted to make queue times faster, we could increase autofill rates, we could increase the skill disparity between players that we're willing to allow in a game. And on the reverse side, if we wanted to make match quality better, we could let queue times go higher, we could wait longer before autofilling you, which is also queue times going higher. And on the surface, that might improve things for high elo players. You're like, well, we get a higher quality game, but we just wait longer. I think the problem that you can run into there is sometimes, depending on, like, when you're really high skill, like when you're on the challenger ladder, there just might not be a good person to match you with. And even if there is, you might be waiting for a really long time. I mean, imagine you're sitting in queue at any given time in challenger. If you're the #1 player on the ladder, right, there probably aren't a lot of people who are similarly skilled to you to put you in a game with or against them. We need 10 people to make a game. And not only do we need 10 people, we also need 10 people playing the position that they want to play, or at least their secondary, hopefully. And so you can imagine, like, you could end up, sitting in queue, like you said, for an hour or even longer. And I think a lot of players probably don't want to do that. I think one of the things that we have talked about, which might sound a little counterintuitive, but could be good, is you can imagine, like, not all challenger or master tier players really care that much if they're playing their primary position or not. They might be able to play several positions really well. But
Sure.
autofill kind of treats all of them equally. And so what we could do, or I could see us doing something like this, is allowing players to kind of opt into, hey, I'm kind of willing to play, another position if you really need me to. I'd prefer to play, top, but if you want to autofill me early because you need me to play something else, that's okay. Like, we could do things like that. I don't know that would actually really solve the problem, though. I think some of it is a population issue up there.
Well, that would be a good thing. I think that would be a good thing, that you can choose whether you want to have a longer queue, but you're guaranteed to play your role, or you can choose to be autofilled and have a quick game.
Yeah, I think so. We did an experiment a while back where we gave players an opportunity to veto a position. So basically say, I'll play this position or this position, but not this. And what you actually see happen over time, and this is so weird, but it's actually really cool. What you see happen over time is, at first, a couple players are like, okay, I veto support, right? I don't want to play support. And what that does is it pushes up the autofill rate slightly for everyone else, because you're sort of shrinking the pool of people who can autofill, right? And that makes their queue times that makes their queue times stay the same, but it makes them autofill more often. And so as they begin to autofill more often, they're like, wait, I feel like I'm autofilling all the time. And so more players opt out of support. And you get this cycle repeating itself over and over until finally what happens is pretty much everyone has opted out of support, and you basically have a system where there's no autofill anymore because you can't autofill any players. They've all opted out. And then queue times go way up. And so, like, as much as we would like to do a feature like veto, we've found that it's really hard because matchmaking quality just degenerates over time as more and more people opt out of playing support. And so, yeah, it's really tricky to find the right solution to this problem, but I agree, it is a problem that we want to do better. And I think, finding the right balance between how long we're willing to wait before we autofill you and what match quality we care about, stuff like that, is definitely something we can look at. At the lower end, though, it's kind of a different scenario. We have more options available to us. So one of the things that actually does feel really bad, let's say you're a gold player. If you get autofilled right now, let's say you're a gold mid player, right? If you get autofilled to support, do you think you're as good at playing support as you are at mid?
Well, no.
No, probably not. You're probably gonna int. You don't know what champions you're gonna play. Like it's gonna be a disaster, right?
Play Janna,
And
spam shield, and
yeah,
right.
Janna, I'm just gonna press E so hard, right? I'm just gonna shield you.
Stay next to your ADC, and that's alright. Anyone can do that.
The problem that's actually happening there is, yeah, you're definitely not as good at support, which you play 1 in every 20 games or whatever, as you are at mid, which you play all the time. And the matchmaker doesn't have any sense of that at all. The matchmaker is just like, you're gold, right? You're a gold player. And that was actually the one of the key reasons why we wanted to do position ranks and positional matchmaking. Because when we look at a player from position to position, we see that they're actually between 2 and 5 divisions worse at off positions than they are at their main. If you take a support player, for example, like that same support player who's maybe a gold support, they're probably like as bad as potentially silver at other positions, but we're matching them like they're gold. So even if they wanted to get better at mid or top or whatever other position, they're probably not going to choose to play those games for the exact same reason that you talked about not wanting to come back to League of Legends after a break. You're going to feel really bad when you lose all of those over and over and over, and you're just going to go like, whatever, I'm just going to go back to support. I know I'm good at that. I'm just going to go play it, right? And so at lower elo, like we can do things like positional matchmaking, position ranks to give you still good queue times, but better match quality, and make you feel good no matter what position you're playing. I think that's something that we're trying to do there.
Well, that's kind of a good logic, and I think it's a cool feature that you're matched based on your elo. It's just like having an experiment of like ranking a new account and just playing off role, and then let's see where I can reach with this role in particular. And yeah, I think that's cool. The only thing is that I don't think there's a huge, well, I believe there's not a huge difference if in roles in higher elo. That's well, that's my opinion, but there's many players who can master a couple roles, and back in the days there was no queuing with specific roles. You just queue up and you ask for your role, and if you're first pick, you can choose, and if you're not first pick, you have to adapt, or basically if you're not first pick, you have to support. So I think it's a nice thing,
I agree. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
But I also believe that players should be pushed towards playing other roles as well, because they have to learn the game from other perspective, and it's really important for people to understand how other roles work, so you can learn how to play with them better, because it's a team game, right? So if you wanna ask stuff from your jungler, you should first learn how jungle works and understand that your jungler is not someone that can just spam ganks on your lane, because he has other stuff to do. And it's the same for your support. You can't just ask for your support to just spam wards over there, because he has stuff to respect as well, like there's timings and stuff. And yeah, I believe it's interesting for players to play other roles and not just stick to one thing, and just, I don't know, like one tricking in this game isn't something really well, some people do it, like they can climb really high just one trick in and stuff, but it's also important for them to play other stuff and other roles.
Yeah, I actually agree 100% with you. And so one of the things that we are doing is, like, once you hit master and above, you only have one rank going forward. Like it's the kind of the same system that exists today, and I think it's an acknowledgement of exactly what you said, which is by the time you're playing at that caliber, you are using a different set of skills, right? You're exercising macro play and vision game and like your team fighting skills and things like that become less specific to the position you're playing, although there are still some specific skills. And so we agreed that, like, it probably doesn't make sense to have 5 different challenger ladders and do one for each position, because a lot of those players are pretty versatile. I think that's one of the hallmarks of why they're so good. At the same time, to your point, right, where you're like, hey, players shouldn't one trick, players should play multiple positions and be comfortable with them. I think we agree that, like, that would be ideal, because then by the time you get up into that higher skill bracket, you are already a very versatile player and you don't have to kind of learn that skill. And one of the barriers to that right now is that example I gave you, right? If I'm that gold support player, if, let's say I want to get better at mid, like I want to play mid, there's 2 problems. The first thing is, if I queue up as mid, it's going to put me into a gold game, and I'm going to feel like I just lose this, right? I'm losing this game for my team. I'm losing LP. I'm hurting my rank, etc. The other thing is, let's say I tough it out, right? And I play through those 10 games. I play through those 20 games. I finally get to a stable win rate. I finally start improving, and I finally rank up back to gold. Well, all I've really done is I just got my rank that was gold down to silver probably, and now back to gold again, which doesn't feel very rewarding, right? It feels like I just punished myself to learn a position. So most players won't do that, right? Most players will just play support because they're like, I'm good at that. And they'll just one trick their way up. And what we see when we look at players in general is most players tend to play one position, maybe two. And we think that one of the big reasons for that is the matchmaking experience and the fact that there's no recognition, right? There's nothing telling me this is how good you are at mid, this is how good you are at top. Now go get better at those. It's just like a single rank that's saying you're gold. And if you only got gold by playing support, it still says you're gold. So that's fine. And I think that's what we're trying to kind of fix there so that players will feel good about playing off position games, becoming more adaptable, leveling up their skills in new areas. And I think hopefully that'll be net good for the game, especially at higher elo, where those same players hopefully will have been more broad and thus are more versatile high skill players now. So it remains to be seen if that'll actually happen, but that's kind of the hypothesis, right? And that's what we'd like to see.
Yeah, encouraging players to play other roles. That's kind of true. If sometimes you want to play another role, you know you're gonna int your first games for sure.
Yeah, I mean this happened to me last season. I was like, I want to get better at ADC, right? And I'm like a platinum level player, and I am not a platinum level ADC. I can tell you that right now. And so what happens when I queue up in that position is I just feed, and it's not intentional. I'm trying my best, but I don't know the dynamics of a 2v2 lane, right? I don't know where I should ward in bot lane. I don't know how to team fight or position on an ADC. I think like a lot of those things, I can learn them and I can get better. But if you start me out in a platinum game, right, like that's not going to set me up for success, and I'm just going to feel really sad and not going to want to play, right?
It feels legit. I think that's definitely a good thing. Like ranks for each role, to be honest. I kind of like it. Well, I guess that kind of wraps it up. Maybe talk about the last topic. Well,
Sure.
I wanted to talk about. It's kind of the perspective for a new player.
Mm-hmm.
Which is the fact that a new player has to go through like playing against bots to playing against a lot of smurfs, and then come back to a rank system. And how is there any I don't know, is there a new system for new players where they can have a nice and smooth way up to ranks and enjoy the game in a lower level?
Well, there are definitely things that we could do in general for the leveling experience. I can't really speak to those super well since it's not my area of expertise. But what I can say on the rank system side is we do want to make, like, we acknowledge that ranked is kind of the end game of League, right? It's the rating of League of Legends. And I think as a result, a lot of players who come to play League of Legends want to play ranked. And I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, but
unfortunately,
you can't hear yourself.
Yeah, like right now, let's say you're a level 30 player, you just hit level 30, you jump into ranked. We kind of just placed everyone around silver-ish, and then if you're better, then you'll climb, and if you're worse, then you'll fall, which kind of feels really bad. And so what we see a lot of new players who come into the system, they'll actually like place in high bronze or low silver, and then they'll lose a ton of games as their MMR kind of recalibrates toward where they should be. Which kind of hinders their learning, right? It's the same example I just gave about Platinum. It's like if I put you in way higher skill games than you actually are, you can't learn that much from them. You're just going to lose and you're just going to feel bad.
Yeah,
and so
you won't understand what happens to you.
Exactly. You have no idea, like, how did that guy outpath me in the jungle? How did I get solo kill by this Riven in lane, etc. And so one of the things that we can do there is, well, a couple things actually. The first thing is we can start players out at a lower rank so that they actually just have an experience of climbing and getting better and improving and getting that good feedback. And so one of the things we are doing is like starting all new accounts, new players in Iron 4, and then they'll just climb up from there. But the other thing, as you called out earlier, is about MMR, right? It's like, where do we start your MMR in ranked? And one of the things that we're looking at that it probably won't be ready for the beginning of the season, but we'll probably roll it out afterward, is how do we predict what your skill in ranked will be based on what your skill in normals was, or how, bot games that you played or whatever. And I think like we can, or yeah, maybe win rate or like things like that. I think like we can use more information to put you in a good initial starting point so that then you're going to be in similar like games with similarly skilled players. And so the experience should be that you start in Iron 4, you're calibrated at the right point of your MMR, you have fair games against other players, and as you win them, you climb up and to bronze, silver, gold, and beyond. And I think that's what we're trying to get to. And those are some of the things that we're working on to get there.
Okay, that's fair. Well, like starting at the bottom and then like having these games where your MMR just drastically improves when you win a game and decreases when you lose. Yeah, I wanted to know more about the 1 to 30 experience, but
so sorry.
That's all right. But definitely a good thing for new players because it's just like going into mythic reds with no gear. As you finally manage to level up. So, okay. So the last question I wanted to ask is about feedback from the community. And how are you as Riot Games are going to take that feedback, and how like what's the best way to reach you as a player, as a streamer, as anyone who wants to put the effort to give feedback and positive feedback and constructive and to make a change. Like, how is it possible for anyone to reach Riot Games?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I think it's so tricky to answer because let's take an example, right? Let's say you're a player, you love Fiddlesticks, and you're really passionate about Fiddlesticks. We're changing him, and you're really upset about it. What's that?
Okay, let me interrupt you just 1 second because you probably don't know about this, but we have that guy in France, right?
Oh, really?
His name is Narcus, right? He's probably considered one of the biggest Fiddlesticks player in the world, and this guy is known for whining a lot about the game balance, right?
Oh my
God!
God!
It's funny that you mentioned Fiddlesticks and you talk about it because that's probably something that happens like 10 times a year with that guy.
That's great. All right, let's say you're that guy, right?
But you can go on with your explanation.
Yeah, so you got a ton of ideas about Fiddlesticks. You want to reach out to someone. You put together a really thoughtful boards or Reddit post or something like that, trying to get attention, and maybe no one sees it or no one responds, or you feel like it just fell on deaf ears, or you felt like maybe no one cares about your opinion. I think that really sucks. But from Riot's side, it's kind of hard too, because let's say, maybe there's 500 of us working on League of Legends. I think there's actually less, but just for a round number. And like, let's say we're trying to cover every region, every language, every player. Like, it's really easy to miss things. And I think that's part of the problem that can lead players to not feeling heard all the time. And we do everything we can to get better at that. I think like we have a lot of people who are just part of those communities and are looking for things and forward threads and message each other and things like that, which I think is great. But sometimes people just won't make it through and get their message heard. And I think that's where like outreach can be really helpful. I think like on one hand, us knowing different people who are prominent in the community who are passionate about certain things, and on the other hand, people in the community knowing sort of who they can reach out to if they don't know who else to talk to. I think that those are really helpful. One thing that I always encourage players to do when I'm interacting on like Reddit or the boards is if there's something that I can't answer, I'll just tell them like, it's fine, DM me anyway, right? Like message me about this thing and I'll go find the person who can answer that question or who can talk to you about this thing. So I think that's a really good tactic. Like if you want to reach out and you don't know who to talk to, like if no one else, like me, like come find my Twitter, come find me on Reddit, I don't mind any kind of messages or in-game ads or anything. Like I'm always happy to talk to people,
Okay.
and I can forward on that feedback. But let me talk a little bit about like more broadly how we view feedback, because like it's really important to us. I think using ranked as an example is probably the best. So go back like 2 years, right? We worked on dynamic queue, and I'm sure you remember if you were playing that, like the
Yes.
feedback from the community wasn't super great around dynamic queue,
It wasn't
and
great at all.
we ended up bringing back solo queue. We ended up doing flex, and we finally like kind of listened and made some changes. But we actually did learn a lot from that, right? And when you look at what we're doing with this set of rank changes, go back to April. That's the first time we talked about this. And I think what you'll see is we've been talking endlessly. We've been answering questions. We've been looking for feedback. Listening to feedback, though, doesn't always mean that we're going to make every change. Like, people might have really good ideas, but they might be conflicting. You might say, I want the gold emblem to have red on it, and another person might say, I love it with green. Which one is the right one, right? Like, we
Yeah.
ultimately have to be the arbiters of what feedback we're going to act on. But I think what we're trying to do with ranked is make sure that, one, we're out there talking all the time about what our intentions are, what we're trying to accomplish, getting sneak previews of stuff out there so that we can get feedback, and then trying to listen, respond, react as much as possible, and where appropriate, make changes. And that doesn't mean that we're always going to make all the changes, or we're always going to make the changes that players want or that individual players want. But hopefully through getting that stuff out there, getting your feedback, doing those previews, talking about it early and often, we will get to a really good product that like people by and large will love. And that's our hope. I think that's how we view feedback,
So
and that's
you're
how we want to work on
so
systems
you're
like this.
taking it into account when you make changes. That's the idea.
Yeah, the
So
idea is we have as much information as possible when we do make changes so that we can make smart decisions.
and that works that way for, let's say, game balance too, or
Yeah, I think a lot of the folks on live balance and on the balance team, like I don't want to speak for them, but I think they're really keen to collect feedback from people and to hear how people feel about different changes they're making to the game. But if anyone ever has like a thing about game balance or anything related to champions and they just don't know who to talk to, like feel free to reach out anytime to me, and I'll redirect it or I'll find the right person.
okay, all right, that's great. Well, I think that's it.
Cool.
No more questions.
Great.
Thanks a lot for your time,
Yeah, it was fun chatting.
and yeah, anything to say to the French community?
The French community. I think the thing that I would say is sometimes it can be hard for us to reach non-English speaking communities. And so one of the things that we really do rely on is, folks like yourself to be able to collect and relay feedback from, the French community or the German community or the Spanish community or whatever. And so, yeah, like reach out, guys. Like make sure that you contact influencers that who, can relay feedback to Riot, or reach out to me directly, even in French. Like I'll auto translate that stuff from Google or anything. Like I'll try my best. And we really appreciate all the feedback we get from all the different perspectives. And thank you for playing.
Alright. Eh bien, merci à tous d'avoir regardé cette vidéo. J'espère que ça vous a plu. Et à bientôt pour une autre vidéo.